the microphone on? It is. Okay, now I hear it. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the toast and roast portion of the proceedings. This is at Sulima's request. So, the idea here is if you have something to say, come towards the front. And I think we can do it sort of pell-mell, just like form a sort of line-ish thing and come up to this microphone, though. That's important, because if you're not talking into this microphone, you won't be preserved for Sulima's future enjoyment on the video.
That is so important.
Yes. So, for posterity, yes, you do have to come up here to do it. Not a big speech, but like a minute or two if you have a story to tell or something wise or funny that Sulima said that you remember, or just something you love about her, something you admire, and teasing is encouraged. So I'll start. My name is Kim Transier. Oh yeah, say your name and say how you know Sulima before you launch into your thing. My name is Kim Transier. I know Sulima from here. I've known her here at WUF for about 15 years, and mostly from serving on committees with her. And a thing I love about her is, well, there are a lot of people who are good leaders, and there are people who I admire for their energy and creative, getting stuff done, drive. And Sulima is one of those people, but a thing that makes her really special among those special people is that as much as she loves making things happen, she really loves encouraging other people to make things happen. She's not like, I'm the king of the mountain and, you know, I'm in charge of everything. She really draws people out, draws people in, and I've had the great good fortune to be one of those people who was drawn in. And one of the things I've said from this very spot before, and I'll say it again, is that I have had to make it a practice. Like I say, I've known Sulima for 15 years or more. I've had to make it a practice to say no to every seventh thing that she asks me to do. And when I get up here and I'm supposed to say something for the benefit of newcomers to WUF, like give them advice about how to join this community, that is often my advice. Say yes to every seventh thing that Sulima asks you to do. Although for some people that person is Rosie Hamilton. Yeah. Anyway, the one thing I hate about Sulima is that she makes me feel old. I don't have her energy, her courage, and her thirst for change. She makes me tired. That's it for me. Stephanie, would you like to go next? And then, yes, we did work that out in advance. Stephanie goes after me, but after that it is a free-for-all. So just like, if you have something to say, you can drift forwards.
Well, I am Steph Berry. I'm not as good at Kim as speaking extemporaneous. Okay, that would be an example.
Extemporaneously.
Thank you, Kim. So I wrote something down, and it's meant to be to Sulima, who is supposed to be sitting here, but is in the back getting mic'd up. So she'll just have to listen to this later. But my name is Steph Berry. I am a debut women's fiction author. I am Sulima's writing acolyte, and I am the publisher of her books and her website. Today, as we gather to celebrate Sulima, her 85th birthday, and her 4th book in 3 years, I have to wonder, does the muse ever get a day off?
Oh, it's different. Yes, oh no.
At Sulima's house? You're mic'd now.
I know. And I couldn't hear you. Could you repeat that last line?
Yeah, you ruined my joke.
Oh, could you repeat it, please?
Of course, I will.
Thank you.
As we gather to celebrate Sulima Malzin's 85th birthday and her 4th book in 3 years, I have to wonder, does the muse ever get a day off at Sulima's house? She is wearing out her publisher.
That was no joke.
That was a complaint. Sulima suggested this toast and roast, sort of like Tom Sawyer sneaking into his own funeral to eavesdrop on the eulogies. But don't worry, Sulima, unlike Tom's family, we know you're listening. So we promise to only speak to you in poetically honest terms.
Poetically honest. Yeah, you know what that means.
Sulima recently invented a groundbreaking poetry technique, stitching together lines from other poets to create entirely new poems. Her new book contains some of these. You can read them there. She also recently found out that this is a centuries-old technique called a cento, which is not bad to reinvent something that can be found in the work of Homer and Virgil. Today, though, we're celebrating her 85th orbit around the sun. How many of you know that Sulima went out and got a tattoo to commemorate this?
Yes.
And I will tell you, she is more than ready to show it off to anyone who's bold enough to ask. I know that Sulima, oh, here we go. I know that Sulima has touched a lot of you here. We have Kay, we have Kate, who have also read poetry and write under Sulima's guidance. Many of you here have warmed your hearts and hands at her group soup here at WOOF. And I'm sure plenty of you have attended her Russian Christmas annually. If Sulima has touched you, I'm dropping things. If Sulima has touched you in any of these gatherings, you know that her generosity stretches further than her poetry. I was deeply blessed to meet Sulima through the Raging Grannies and grateful that she and I started talking one day about writing. I am Gen X, and I have been cynical about art my entire life. You know, art, whatever. Sulima gave me permission to stop scoffing and to start writing. And it's one of the most profound gifts I have ever received. Here's to Sulima, mentor, poet, audacious 85-year-old rascal. May your words never cease to inspire, and may your soups always be warm.
Thank you. I know who these guys are, even though they're not in dress uniform.
Okay, before the rest of this little thing gets going, I just want to say Sulima and I share a birth date, and I am so proud and honored to be her birthday twin, and I love her dearly.
So,
She needs to be a poet, an author, ping pong player, yes she is. Will you keep playing Sulima with me? Oh, our Sulima, our dear Sulima, will you keep playing Sulima with me? As we chat and we write and we laugh together, keep things light. Will you keep playing Sulima with me? A master at cooking soup, generous as she can be, shows leadership in the life that she lives. Respected, requested, blogging her ideas to share. Will you keep sharing Sulima with me? Oh, our Sulima, our dear Sulima, will you keep sharing Sulima with me as we work hand in hand to make the world a better place? Will you keep sharing Sulima with me? 85 years a family gal with a life that's been well lived, shared by her children and grandchildren too. Dear friends from near and far, here to celebrate your day. Will you keep marching Sulima
Oh, dear Sulima, our dear Sulima, will you keep marching, Sulima, with me as we sing and we dance and we fight for rights in all we do? We'll keep on marching, Sulima, with you.
Thank you, my raging grannies all. That is just fabulous. Robin wrote that. Thank you, Robin. Thank you all. Thank you all. And if you don't know about the raging grannies, you need to find out. They're out there. Oh, whoa. Uh-oh, I see my daughter getting up there. Don't be afraid, she says. Don't be afraid.
So I'm Sulima's daughter, Chris, and I just thought I'd share something from her past that you might not know about.
And she says, don't be afraid.
Yeah. Ben, you know her as a writer, and she really always has been a writer. And what I was going to share back a long time ago, before there were robot chat people and form letters and everything, she had a job with American Airlines, and it was a real person, like on a typewriter, responding to people's complaints or whatever they had to write in about. And she was very creative. It was one of her outlets for writing. And I think, and I could be wrong, Mom, you can correct me, but I think one response to a letter she did totally in rhyme. Is that right?
Because the complaint letter had come totally in rhyme. Iambic pentameter, 3 pages of it.
And it went on and on. And I think somehow somebody high up in American Airlines, she got recognition for it. So, yeah, she always had a fun little clever return to a letter that she would share. So I just thought that might be a nice little tidbit you didn't know about her.
Yeah. Thank you, yes. And a safe one to tell, right? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, that could have been in 2 Truths and a Lie.
Well, Sulima,
Get up to the mic.
you were the first person I was fortunate enough to take poetry from when we moved here to Oregon 18 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah. And I believe that it was shortly after that you sought me out in church and gave me this little piece of paper. I strive to live up to this.
Read it into the mic, or it won't get.
Sorry.
It won't get
Yeah.
forever.
Okay, you gave me this. As much as I try to be an easygoing, stretch your wings and fly type, just can't stop trying to burst people into flames with my mind. Now, Sulima saw a rare talent here in one of her students. Oh, sorry, I'm feeling really impromptu. Sorry about that. Sulima has always been an understanding woman about talent, raw talent to be. Anyway, it was really quite nice of you, and I love it.
And you're giving me this back? No. Yeah. No.
I'll carry it next to me.
Thank you, Jennifer. Uh-oh.
My name is Suzanne Riles, and I've been here quite a bit longer than Sulima has. I've been here since 1986. I think that's around 38 years. And so when Sulima first arrived, she brought poetry with her. I think you're the one who introduced us to Bill Stafford's poetry, and I really appreciate that. I think the writing angle, I've taken a number of her workshops. I love them. am very grateful to you for that. But I'm going to mention something that I worked on with Sulima that was very different, and that was to bring a minister here. I was on a ministerial search committee with Sulima, who dragged Kim in. This is one of the things she dragged you in to do. So I got to work with Kim too, and there were about 5 or 6 others of us. And we met at Sulima's house over a period of months, deciding how to do this for a fellowship that was accustomed to not having a minister for 35 years before. And it was like walking on uncharted territory for sure. It was enjoyable. We made a lot of sense of warmth among us, I think, in that period of time. And we hired a quarter-time interim minister who over time, the congregation decided to bring her FTE up to half, and then she was only interim, so we got another minister who had potential to become full-time, and that was our own Tracy. I like to think this was a good change, although I loved WUF from the beginning, even when it was lay-led, and I'm looking forward to the 5 months when Tracy will be on sabbatical, because we'll get to relive that. We'll get to go back to what it was like as
we'll have
a
poetry.
lay-led place. And maybe we'll have just a little more poetry
Maybe a
during
little
that
more
time.
poetry. Thank you, Suzanne.
So another perspective. I met Sulima in a parking lot. It had nothing to do with church. It had nothing to do with writing. We both happened to help out elderly gentlemen in an assisted living facility. Nobody's talked about her caregiving skills, her warmth, her understanding, her very deep and natural approach to embracing what life we have and how we can best live it. So I walked up to her and I said, I think we do the same thing. That's a great opening, right? And she said, well, I think we do similar things. She was a care manager. I was a caregiver. She's much better at managing than I am. Which is true. I'm not very good at managing. I'm a little sneaky. We shared several clients together. She helped me out with a dear lady, and I helped her out with a few people, and it was just a great journey. And then we found out all kinds of things, like we both wrote poetry, and we had all these other interesting things in common. But as far as caring and knowing how to meet a person where they are and help them through and guide them in clever and subtle ways to live their fullest life, it's just a wonder and a joy to learn that from you and experience that with
This
you.
is very much a mutual admiration society we have here. Thank you, Anne.
Did I say who I was? No. Anne Farley.
Thank you. Wow.
Kind of short. I don't know if that's going to reach me. I'll let you do it.
Yeah.
Can everybody see me? There we go. Okay. So first of all, it's probably pretty obvious that Sulima and I are close to being about the same height. She might be a little taller than I am. My name is Julie.
Taller than her.
I'm used to it. My name is Julie Comer. My partner Jane and I just recently in January moved right above Sulima. I hope we're not too noisy. But from the time, I'm a crier, so I'm probably going to cry. A friend of ours saved us from the frozen storm we had in January from our old place, which was powerless, no heat, completely dark. And in his truck brought us over to our new place that did have power, no furniture, but we brought blankets and pillows to kind of survive. And Sulima was so sweet. I went down and said, if you hear us roaming around upstairs, you know, we're over here just so you know what's going on. And I said, we brought blankets and pillows. And she's like, you're going to sleep on the floor? And we're like, well, yeah. And she's like, no, you're not. So she gave us all of her couch pillows. So we could at least sleep on something somewhat soft, which was a huge lifesaver. But I just want to reiterate that she is probably one of the most generous people I've ever met. And she was so sweet to do that for us. And then we were stuck for a couple of days, so she insisted on us coming downstairs, having lunch with her, and had some of her awesome and famous soups. And somebody was saying that her soups are full of warmth. But we were at her Christmas where the borscht was cold, and that was just as awesome as your warm soups.
Borscht was cold.
Isn't that how it's so supposed to be served?
No, it was hot.
Oh, okay. Well, okay, I stand corrected. I'm sorry.
You must have got a cold bowl.
We probably got there late, you know. But I just want to say that I just think you're one of the sweetest
Thank
and
you.
most generous people I've ever met.
Well, I have to say that you are you are the finest neighbors that I've had in a long time.
Oh, that's good to know. I have a piano too, so I hope it's not too loud.
It's lovely to have you. Lovely to have you both upstairs. And no, I never hear you doing anything.
Oh, okay.
Ah, here's that long timer. And she brought her laptop and everything. Oh my God.
My name is Kay DeLay. I have known Sulima for 30 plus years. She was doing something that she called Heart Breath that she
go
did
there.
very, very well. And she changed a lot of lives. She changed the life of a friend of mine. And so I wanted to see what she was doing. Thank you. Because I was learning to be a therapist and I wanted to be able to change lives. Turned out I couldn't possibly do it the way Sulima did, but it helped me a lot. Growing into myself in spaces created. Years of 9 months, weekends of heart breath in a Lincoln City beach house. I was 11 again, playing on a cable spool, floating with each new wave. Solo, looking out the master bedroom window as I wrote my master's thesis. 9 months of heart breath, weekends at the clearing, waking with my new foster sons for a holiday, slippers as gifts, embraced in healing space. My child danced on the $600 hot tub cover, $600. All was forgiven. Work party weekends, play Friday and Sunday embraced, hard work Saturday. I threw a wasp nest bigger than my head into bushes far from the house, grubbed out blackberries, leaving mine at home to grow. Cats from the clearing at my home a decade later harbored memories. Serious consideration of a home we would build together for her, Jerry, my father, and uncle. So many plans, no way past the reality. Now a condo at the end of the path, room a cube, Quirkle and Quiddler, writing groups and Sunday suppers. I begin writing my story in earnest, embraced by the life I have created in spaces Sulima has offered me. A life I would have run from if I had known in advance who myself would become.
Thank you, Kay.
We have time for one more.
One more,
and
and then
yes,
that
and that
one.
will be you. And
Yeah.
then we'll go to the reading portion.
this is my oldest great-grandchild, Isaiah Kettle.
Hey, old timer.
Oh,
I wanted to say a few things about how wise you were. You challenged me to think about my opinions, ones that I have thought that I was already solidified in. I also like your competitive nature when it comes to board games. Everything is everything is civil until I am starting to beat you. I'm not sure what's shorter, your new book or your height. Happy birthday.
thank you, Isaiah. I was not expected, and it was just a wonderful surprise. Ah, my turn. Okay, well, it's 3 o'clock, and what? Oh, we want to speak to two truths and a lie. Yeah. Did some of you get to play that game? Yeah, what'd you come up with? Story number 1.
We believe it was story number 3 that was the lie.
That story number 3 was the lie.
Yes.
And no, Wade says it was 2. Oh, Cheryl says 1, 2. Okay, story number 1. Refresh my memory because I don't remember what order they're in now. Number 1 was what?
Dingling.
Oh, number 1. Yes, if you've read Arms Filled with Bittersweet, you know that that is the story about Dingling, the beggar that gave me Robert Louis Stevenson's Child's Garden of Verses.
Oh yes, I was trying to remember that title. but
Yeah,
I
Child's
knew
Garden of Verses.
were in there.
So that's one truth.
Like to go up in a swing.
And the second truth was either
Pope's penis.
the Pope's penis, you think? The story about Woof. Yeah, you're right. You're right. You're right. I kind of made my mark at Woof way back then when I participated in the coffee house. And there had been a couple that had done some fairly risque poetry, and I thought, well, this is great. I can read Sharon Olds' poem called The Pope's Penis. And I did. And
That would have been my story. That was the night that I brought my 10-year-old piano student. And I was just thinking, oh my God.
yes, it happens. And it could happen today because I've already warned the mom here that there are some words coming up that may be a little, but anyway, so I have to say that my friend Gail declared herself my friend that night. She said, I want this person for a friend. Yes. So that was good. So rascality is my thing, and I can't help it. It happens, and I think I've passed it on to some of my family. Oh, Norma.
Can I start you off?
Start me off with what?
Well, my friend Bud Clark, remember?
Yes.
Whoop whoop.
Yeah.
I want to expose you to art.
Oh, yes, 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 yes. Yes, there was that too. But you know, I am so glad to be able to be here for this event. There have been times in the last few years when that was doubtful, and I'm just so pleased that I've made it this far, and if I make it next year, maybe we'll do another preemptive celebration. I'm going to sit, I think, because it's just, I've been on my feet a lot this afternoon. So I want to make sure that, and Chris and the kids have left because there's another birthday happening later this afternoon. But I wanted to make sure that I thanked everybody that has helped put this together. You know, my daughter Chris and Steph and Cheryl and Gail and Kim. And special thanks go to Kate Leonard. And that's because the cover of this book, which has been receiving such accolades, is a collage created by Kate Leonard. And it was another collaboration, another wonderful brainchild that erupted and developed. And so thank you so much, Kate. And I guess that leads me to starting to read. And I wish I could read everything to you because I love everything in this book. And some of you who have been around WOOF for a while know that I have done poetry services over the years. And in the course of those poetry services, we have created a number of WOOF community poems. And we did that by jotting down lines from poems and then putting them together in a way that created a new poem. I've been doing that for years, and we called them fragmented or found poems or community-built poems. And then I found out that there was a name for that. And Steph described it. It is called cento. It's a very old form. And I began to think about putting together a book that featured mostly those poems. I've been a fan of epigraphs. Those of you that have read my other books and other poems know that I often begin a poem with an epigraph, which is a line or two from another poem that inspired my process. So I did that I kind of developed that a little more. And this book is full of those and 3 major centos, which I'm going to say, and this is a little bit of a brag, Kim Stafford, who wrote a beautiful endorsement on the back, said that I am doing with cento poems something that he hasn't seen done before, which is creating entire missives with the words of other poets, except for a very few of my own, which are either in italics or in parentheses. So there are 3 of those in this book, and I'm going to read 2 of them, along with some others. So I'm going to start with, because the time is getting away from us, I'm going to start with page 3 in the book, which is titled, "And We Threw Ourselves into the Future Together." These words are from a Jim Harrison poem titled Carpe Diem, in which he relates in his inimitable fashion, and just 27 powerful lines, a 50-year love story. From "We drove her Aqua Ford convertible into the country with a sack of apples, seizing the day," all the way to 50 years later, we hold each other looking out the windows at birds, making dinner, a life to live day after day. I love Jim Harrison's work. He's one of my favorite poets. Now, a good part of my memoir, Arms Filled with Bittersweet, dances around the 64-year love story of my parents, who also threw themselves into the future together, perhaps on a sunny afternoon that involved apples. While not all in my family would agree that theirs, my parents, was in fact a love story, I have come to believe it was. For I have learned that love can come poorly wrapped and stuffed into many different packages, that its language is often crude and foreign, rather than the poetic, sweet, and even musical notes that we were hoping for. What does it mean, my mother asked, that he never once, until just days before he died, told me he loved me? Some questions have no answers. So the first couple of poems in the book are about my parents. The second one, titled With Thanks to Jim Harrison, again, for his poem titled Mom and Dad. Within its single stanza, we, as the poem's gentle readers, are invited to feel the naked belly button that once tied us to our mothers, and to kneel and to thank her for our jubilant but woebegone lives. I can't help thinking about the part where the poet calls it unprofitable to wonder about the circumstances of our conception, except for the small possibility that our parents might have been, hopefully, out in the orchard grass feeling the crunch of windfall apples under their frantic bodies. May it have been so. It's a tricky thing when it comes to knowing which to skip and which to read. This one was kind of important to me. Most of my poetry is personal, it's conversational and autobiographical. It's the way I've learned to tell my story in the sweetest way. This is called Learning to Ignore the Voices. And the epigraph is from a poem by Richard Terrell called You Must Change Your Life. Ignore the voices. Ignore the voices you first heard long ago, telling you someone else got more than you. Someone else got better. One of the first things I knew I had to change about my life were the voices insisting that, like all the women in my family who had come before me, I was meant to live in the shadows. One day at a flea market, I saw a shabby oil painting, dust-covered and faded in a scratched and dented frame. It was a portrait of a very old woman with bold, piercing, dark eyes gazing straight at me from beneath a black headscarf. A veined and calloused hand clasped over her mouth. Lifting her gently from the bin, I turned the picture over, and there in a shaky scrawl, words I knew were meant for me. If you ask me what I have come into the world to do, I will tell you, I have come to live out loud. And that's from Emile Zola. Okay, almost time for a cento. I'll give you the backstory on the cento. I've had several writing companions over the years. I've been in 2 writing groups. They've both lasted over 20 years. And in one of them, Susan Bucharest was my writing companion. She's one of the many friends that I've lost in the last couple of years that have gone on to their next place. And Susan was very fond of a young Portland poet named Carl Adamczyk. And one day we used to write and offer each other writing prompts. And one day her prompt was a couple of lines from Carl's poem, The Solitude of an Apricot. It went like this. the place where everything loved is placed, assembled for memory. The delicate hold and tender rearrangement of what is missing. So the poem that I wrote from that prompt is titled Place, and it's dedicated to Susan. Your words fascinate me, Carl. They leap sparkling off the page. I don't know how to assemble for memory everything, and everyone ever loved, but I'm eager to learn. I do know the place won't be a list of words and names, nor a series of images, but rather a collage where layers tumble wildly on top of other layers, scraps of memory flying everywhere. A collage would know how to hold ever so delicately the tender rearrangement of what is missing. And so here is a full-fledged cento poem containing words from many poets, musicians. It's titled The Delicate Hold and Tender Arrangement of What is Missing. Words found, repurposed, and reassembled. In my little town, we grew up believing that God keeps his eye on us all. And if you touch your down there any time other than when using the toilet, your hand will turn green and fall off. Where I come from, we didn't say pasta. We didn't say fireflies. We said spaghetti, noodles, macaroni, and lightning bugs. By the time I was 6 months old, my mother knew something was wrong with me. I got looks on my face she had not seen on any child. My parents loved each other like a secret. I like to imagine them out in the orchard grass, feeling the crunch of windfall apples under their frantic bodies. The first time I found love in our house, it was disguised as loyalty. Eventually, I learned the truth about fences is that they only hold those who are willing to be held. Eventually, the future shows up everywhere. After a while, you learn the subtle difference between holding a hand and sharing a life. That love doesn't mean possession, and company doesn't mean security. You learn to build your hope on today, as the future has a way of falling apart in mid-flight. After a while, I learned that when I said poem, you heard April is the cruelest month, as I marked the page declaring hope is the thing with feathers. I learned the hard way that life is real, and if you can survive it, why not survive it well? And with love and art and meaning given where meaning is scarce. Life is short, and I've shortened mine in 1,000 deliciously ill-advised ways that I will keep from my children. After all, I'm trying to sell them the world, and any decent realtor walking you through a shithole chirps on about good bones. Maybe there comes an apology after a harsh comment, a word that opens an unfinished poem like a key in a lock. You learn and grow with every goodbye. Every day there's something old to feel sorry about, what I should have done and didn't, or what I did and kept on doing. In Lilburn, Georgia, early spring of 2014, wearing my now dead son's robe, I sit in his chair on his front porch for the last time, waiting for the sun to rise and the birds to come. We used to cook together, and sometimes we sang. Come on, take me to the Mardi Gras, where the dancing is elite and there's music in the street both night and day. And I will lay my burden down, rest my head upon that shore, and when I wear that starry crown, I won't be worrying anymore. This place could be beautiful, right? You could make this place beautiful. Thank you. Now, my research tells me that writing cento poems does not require you to list the names of the original poets or those sources, but I've done a pretty good job of it in the 3 centos that I have here, because I want my readers to explore poetry. I want you to go and find those poems. If the lines are intriguing to you, go look them up and see what else they have to say, because these words were wonderful in their original context, and now they're wonderful again, right? Okay. We couldn't have a book without at least a couple of political type poems in them, political voices. So this is one, and it's not a cento, a true cento, but it is definitely quoting lines, as some of the others that you've heard this afternoon do. This one is called January 2021, and it's for Beth Williams, with gratitude for her poem, I Knew Better Than to Say. When friends asked what she was writing about it, as if she were the one charged with explaining how a match turns to fire, as if she were the only one who knew how to research insurrection. She, being a poet and knowing how to answer in words that do not require speaking the unspeakable, said she would rather write about the bird flying south, dangling dinner from its mouth like a little flag. She likened herself to a lone egret, standing hungry and one-legged on a pier, looking into the river for food on a day when nothing swims by. Don't ask me again, she said, loud and clear, to write that this is not who we are. It is. And then, bless her breaking heart, the poet goes on to say, we are the species unable to fly, the unwinged walkers who every single day will find a way to pluck the idea of hope from the sky. All right, I'm going to read the second cento, the last cento in the book, which is very close to me and one of my very favorites. And it's built around a poem by a Portland poet named Jeanette Encinius. Her poem is titled Between the Sweater and the Skin, and it contains words from other poets like Mary Oliver and Marge Piercy and a number of others as well. It's titled, You Brave and Glorious Thing, You've Come So Far. There were times when you thought you knew what you wanted, but then there's so much that you want. You want not to think about the expiration of the world. You want to keep an eye on hope, following a trail through the woods without war, without bombs, without fires which tomorrow's children must fight. You want not to think about the expiration of the world. When your hair is aflame with winter and there are decades of learning and leaving and loving sewn into the corners of your eyes, you want this whole thing to have been something meaningful. A narrative by Nabokov, a work of great passion and poetic beauty. And then you learn that life is real, and if you can survive it, you want to survive it well, with love and art and meaning given where meaning is scarce, and with sweetness where otherwise there is none. You want not to think about the expiration of the world. Every life has a theme, and this is mine. Freeing my passion and kissing joy as it flies, hurrying half-dressed and barefoot into the garden to be wild and perfect for a moment before I am nothing forever. When it's over, I don't want to wonder if I have made of my life something particular and real. I want the currents of life to toss me around like sea glass, to shake me up and leave me washed clean, so that when people see the old woman I've become, they will embrace all that I am, not in spite of the impacts of my life, but because of them. When I die, I want my success measured in joy and rest and pleasure. Let me be nothing but bone and memory, an ancestor of the land, everything and nothing all at once. And now it is late, and you are trying to remember what someone once said about how what we do to the world returns to haunt us. Making tea on a quiet and lonely afternoon, you know what it feels like to fail ferociously, and still you have gained the capacity to rise and rise and rise again. You want not to think about the expiration of the world. You want to keep an eye on hope. And I think I'll end with that. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing this time with me and giving me the opportunity to share my borrowed and stolen words. We're going to be here for a while. We don't have to stay here in the sanctuary. We can go back downstairs and finish up whatever food is there. And I'm glad to have questions and conversation about poetry or anything you want. Thank you again. Maybe we'll do this again next year. Yeah.